Hi there, I'm Brady Bryan, and this is Brady's Corner. This podcast, I'm going to be showcasing business leaders from a variety of businesses that I've had the pleasure to meet with over the years and really showcase their challenges, talk about their industries, talk about their companies, as well as personal lives. Today, we have Steve McAdams. Steve, welcome to Brady's Corner. For those of us that don't know you, please share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Brady. It's a pleasure to be here. This is actually pretty good timing for me. I just made a significant career change. I was worked for an engineering consulting firm, was an owner for about 30 years, and I decided to retire from engineering and focus more on the business side of how we got to where we were and in ways that I can help other firms in similar positions grow and achieve the success that they hope for.
That's great. So you're an engineer, you're a PE.
Yes. I started as a college intern actually for a little 30-person engineering firm, and 30 years later, I stepped down as the CFO of that firm, and we've grown about 300 people during that time. And it's interesting. My career in the engineering side, I was responsible for doing utility master planning for large-scale colleges and universities all over the country. Our clients were Harvard, Yale, University of Minnesota, University of Georgia, and we had to present utility solutions and funding requests to the boards of trustees, and we had about 15 minutes to justify $200 million in expense that was really non-revenue related. So we were heavily scrutinized by the financial people on the board, and I figured at some point I needed to learn their lingo, or else we weren't going to be successful at it. So I started learning how the financial side worked, and after about 15 or 20 years doing that, I got interested in how the financial side of our company worked, and that became more of an interest to me than the engineering side. And because I realized that our company, like a lot of companies, the leaders in the board of directors, they're all technical based. There's not a lot of financial or management people represented, and that there was a gap, and I was fortunate enough to be able to fill that gap. And then in that process, I also realized that our biggest obstacle to growth was we didn't have engineers who had business skills to lead the company forward. So I pitched an idea to the stockholders to start internal leadership training, teach engineers those skills. And 10 years later, we had 8 new profit centers and doubled in revenue, and it was a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed that side of it. I kind of got out of the engineering, and now I like to provide that assistance to other companies.
That's great. I really like that story. Let me ask you this. Tell me about your journey, as you started from an intern, and then your first 10 years before you really, you started pitching some of the boards of trustees and whatnot. How did that growth go? And do you have any advice for young engineers that are starting out in industry? And what advice might you have for those folks?
Yeah, for me, it was kind of the right place at the right time. And I started and the president of the company needed a kind of a gopher, and he was doing all the heavy duty engineering utility planning work, and I learned from him. So I would say take advantage of whatever opportunity comes your way, because that I didn't realize at the time. I kind of thought I was just doing busy work, but it turned out to be a great learning experience. And listen to people with more experience, because there's a lot to learn from them, and if you soak it up, you can really build your own career. And one of the best lessons I learned from that founder was whenever he went into any meeting, he was always prepared. We had a meeting one day at the National Institutes of Health with the fire marshal, and he asked me the night before to get him all the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association codes for these buildings. And I'm like, well, why do you need to do that? Because the fire marshal is going to be there. And he says, well, I want to be able to speak on the same terms as the fire marshal. So he was excellent preparing, and that's a great lesson to learn, is always be prepared. Even if you're not going to be the expert in the room, be able to talk with the expert.
That's great advice. Let me ask you this. So, I know you and I have had a lot of conversations over the last year or two about the impact of COVID and engineering, and the wrinkles that brings, and what really we can expect in the engineering industry over the next 12 to 18 months. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. So it's interesting. Right before I left, I was attending a lot of conferences, and the challenge I couldn't figure out was I kept hearing people say, our team works from home and they're 16% more productive. And I kept asking people, so how are you measuring this productivity? And I couldn't get a real strong answer from that, but it was just, I feel like people working from home were more productive. And one of the things our leadership struggled with was the next generation wanted that flexibility. And I feel like, unfortunately, COVID thrust that into our industry. And in some ways that can be considered a good thing, because I think that is a great opportunity to develop our industry further and have that opportunity for remote working. So I think that is one thing that our hand was forced. The engineering industry is slow to change. So that was kind of a pushed us in that direction. But as far as the industry goes, from what I'm understanding, and we kind of lag a little bit the rest of the markets. So we didn't really see, at least the people I know that are in that field, didn't really see an impact last year, but they're starting to feel it the first quarter and second quarter of this year. And depending on how fast things can recover, that's how fast we can get over that blip. I do know right now, an excellent sign is I just spoke with a couple executive vice president. He can't hire people. He cannot get people. He cannot find people to hire, and that's always a good sign for us, because, as you know, people are our production machines, and when they're in demand, that means the industry's growing.
Right. Let me ask you this, and maybe we should. I think it's appropriate to go on a shameless plug about Bake 21.
Sure.
So August 12th and 13th, you're going to be there, Steve. You're going to be presenting on actually two different courses, right?
Just one initially, yeah.
Just one initially. The Brayn Architecture, Engineering, Construction Conference here in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand at www.baecsummit.com. We'll include that information. Steve, would you talk about a little bit what you plan on presenting?
Sure. I'm going to take the experience I had over those 10 years of helping engineers develop into more business leaders, and the strategic plans that we developed through that process. That's what I'm going to share with the audience, and hopefully that'll help other people bridge that gap from technical to financial, if they're individually, or if the company's struggling to kind of make that leap into being a more business focused type entity. That hopefully that's something that they can learn from that experience. And really, I'm looking forward to it, because it's a conference that the industry really needs. It's a way to open up dialogue and have really good conversations, and that's how companies grow. Is you learn a little bit from each different person, and you formulate that together, and you use that to leverage your organization. And I think that's what the conference is about, and I'm excited to be there and be part of it.
That's great. Me too. It's going to be awesome. Part of your presentation, though, does touch on growth via, maybe new locations, new disciplines, and things like that engineering firms are anticipating right now. We hear, obviously the big shiny things is, the M&A bonanza that's maybe already upon us and we're about to happen. But not a lot of folks think about, organic growth. Maybe that's not as attractive to talk about. And that's going to be one of the things you're talking about, right? So.
Right. It's really about, if you want to open a new office and you don't know where to start, this gives you a nice roadmap. And there's a part of it that says that explains the comparison between should you buy an office in a very existing office in a city that you want to be in. How do you compare those financially, those two opportunities financially, and select the one that's really best for the owners of the organization and it has the greatest chance to succeed. And we'll be talking about a roadmap and what factors and components go into making those decisions. And really it's how to do the best you can to ensure success and a sustainable growth in that office. And I think it should be pretty good discussion topics. And like I said, it's been built from trial and error over the last 10 years, and there's a lot of lessons learned. And I think it'll come across pretty good. And one of the things about it is, and this is kind of how you and I met. First time I met you, you were able to provide a 5-minute explanation of how the tax code worked. And I thought, wow, someone else understands how to get to the 80-20, leverage the 80-20 principle to get to the important things to really help someone. And at that point, I thought we were kind of kindred spirits. And I think that together, that's kind of how we want to, present a lot of this information moving forward, just to cut out the fluff and present the key points that really help organizations.
Do you have anything that you can give us, any previews on maybe some top factors and determining, whether somebody, should a civil engineering firm acquire structural capacity or MEP capacity or vice versa, or, also factors in determining new locations? Can you give us any previews on that?
Sure. Well, as far as mergers and acquisitions go, I can talk for a while about that, but there's also another great talk at that same conference. If people have interest in knowing some of the nitty-gritty details of it, that talk can be very valuable to them. But as far as some tips about opening offices in new locations, it's having a strategic plan that includes a marketing plan, a staffing, and a financial model. That's all very important for implementation. But really, what makes it work is the strategy. And that is, if you're going to branch out, you want to make sure that branch has the same alignment corporately, same mission, vision, core values, same culture as your corporate office, whether you're buying it or whether you're starting it. Otherwise, if that alignment's not there, at some point within the first 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a rift in the leadership. And I've seen this with with some of the companies we've acquired, that it wasn't the right alignment on leadership, and we wound up changing out the leader within 2 or 3 years just because we weren't on the same page. And I think when it comes to either buying or opening an office, alignment and having the right fit is critical. And if you're looking at purchasing, shop around, kick tires, make sure that the people that you're bringing on are the right people to mix with you.
Any thoughts on, you've done this a long time, when you're evaluating people, what are some of the things you look for and maybe a new leader that you're organically building a location?
Well, so in our leadership training, we had a couple qualifications, and one was they had to be accomplished as a manager. And we also had internal project manager training that would help them through that process. So they had to have some basic management skills. They also had to have an opportunity to grow. So it's something within an office or a different discipline, and just the willingness and desire to make that work is necessary. And then we can help with the skills and the process, but they have to have the passion. And that was one thing that all our candidates had in common was a passion to grow and be a good leader. They wanted to be a good leader, and that really went a long way to the process. And I'll be honest, we put 24 people through the program, and they're all great people, but not all of them turned out to be the leaders were wanting to be the right leader for an office, and we were probably 80% of them turned into leaders, and 20% just had have a good career, but that's not their role.
Hey, Steve, thank you so much for joining us again today. For the folks that want to learn a little bit more from you or would like to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
Sure, yeah, it's my pleasure for being here. Thanks for inviting me. You can reach out to me. You can get me through LinkedIn, or you can email me directly at steve@semplanning.com. If you just want to talk about the industry, if you need help with something, I got lots of time and happy to meet or talk with anyone.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Steve. And then, of course, if you'd like to reach me, you can reach out to me. Of course, you can follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and you can also email me at brady@brayn.com. And appreciate everybody for joining us today at Brady's Corner, and look forward to connecting with you on LinkedIn.